Holy crap, I'm sunburnt. Holy crap, there's a stain on my floor from where the basement flooded. Okay, hold up, stop everything. I goofed. I made the big mistake. It turns out I'm not used to classes having two separate things to choose from, and I've never actually played an Unchained Monk, so our perfect scholar kinda needs some key powers. I already put him in the sheet. I forgot to bop on him when we were doing the video. That's my B. But we're gonna do him right here, right now, just really quickly. Action before thought is first. A monk with this ability can spend 2 key points as a free action as part of rolling initiative to roll initiative with advantage. Easy peasy. Go first, kill them all. It's beautiful. Building up cone is next. By spending 2 key points as a swift action, you ask yourself a cone, which you then try to answer. You make a will save at 15 plus half your level. If successful, you get an insight bonus equal to your wisdom on AC and attack rolls, save, skill checks until the end of the round. If you fail, you're confused for a round, but if you succeed, you get to have a, pseudo-guided enchantment that stacks with all the things, which helps us be a little less mad as all get out. Then it's Furious Defense. By spending 1 point from your key pool as an immediate action, you get a +4 dodge bonus to armor class until the end of your next turn. Nothing really sounds furious about that, but a +4 to AC for the low cost of 1 immediate action is really good and stacks with everything else we're doing. Sudden Speed, spend 1 key point from the pool as a swift action and increase your base land speed by 30 feet for a minute. After GMing for someone for as long as I have who's done something kind of similar, never underestimate having a fast move speed because it makes it ludicrously easy to move in and out of people's threat ranges and then get into a flanking position. High jump lets you add your level as a bonus on acrobatics to jump for both vertical and horizontal jumps. You always count as having a running start when attempting an acrobatics check to jump, or you could get a +20 on acrobatics to jump for a round, kind of for the same reason, especially in higher level play when the things are getting bigger and bigger and the threat ranges are getting, again, bigger and bigger. But kind of mostly because this is a prerequisite for Wind Jump. A monk with this key power can spend 1 point from the key pool as a move action to grant themselves a fly speed with perfect maneuverability equal to their base land speed. They must end their movement each round on solid ground or some other surface that can support their weight or fall on their butt. Once active, it lasts for a minute, and now you're like a short-range Saiyan. Why not? Speaking of which, let's end it out with Abundant Step. 2 points from the key pool, and you get a dim door. Okay, there. Turns out maybe I do like the Unchained Monk just a little bit. There's a lot of random stuff in there that's really good, and pulling from both style strikes and key powers, there's a certain degree of versatility there that I really like. But good, well done. We're all caught up. A million apologies for that. We now return you to your Pathfinder skill unlock video, already in progress. What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. I'm real tired. I was sick this morning, then went to a protest anyway. Fun. Min-maxing for fun and profit. Here we go. Today, by the request of the wonderful, the splendid, the kind of one of my closest friends, Bam, oh, Emmy, she'd really like it if I talked about skills that aren't often used in Pathfinder and how to optimize them. You know, you either die a vital striking barbarian or you live long enough to see yourself do whatever the hell this is. Actually, it's kind of fun. I know I keep saying that, but it turns out in 3.5/1E Pathfinder, you can basically do whatever you want, and you can make it work. Sometimes you just gotta get a little spooky-ooky. So, today, we're breaking out the occult stuff. We're gonna talk about occult skill unlocks. Remember, if you're liking what you're seeing, to like, subscribe, ding that bell. Remember that patronage at any tier gets you access to a Google Drive where this character and several of the other ones are written up on for your perusing pleasure. Today, this episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit was brought to you in part by our newest patron, whose name I can't read my monitor with my glasses off. My vision's a lot of things. Good's not one of them. I can cheat and use my phone, though. Old boy basically just signed up like 20 minutes before I started recording this video. It's me, Yask. It's me, Yask. Thank you for your support, buddy. Bam. Here we go. Alrighty, so before we talk about the build in depth, first we must talk about occult skill unlocks, the bread and butter of what we're doing today. Occult skill unlocks were introduced in, well, you know, Occult Adventures And they're basically kind of like the rogue unlocks that you could do in the Unchained stuff if you are a psychic caster or you take a tax that makes you essentially force sensitive to do different things with skills than everybody else can. Sometimes you just have to play by different rules in order to break those rules. You can do several things with them. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are pretty good and attached to like diplomacy or sense motive skills that you're already using at the table. We're not going to touch on those as hard today. Rather, we're going to touch on skills that I feel are like never used at the table, at least like not what they're intended for. Skills I feel like fall in the realm of fiat just that much faster, or that skill is just rapidly replaced by a spell, a class feature, so on and so forth. First and foremost, appraise. Raise your hands if you've used appraise for what appraise is actually for in Pathfinder, kids. None of you? That's what I thought. A DC 20 appraise check tells you how much an item is worth. If you succeed by 5 or more, you can learn that it's magic, but not what that magic does. Failure means you get the price wrong. Fail by 5 or more, you get the price real wrong, which could just nuke a campaign really fast, basically. Pathfinder is so dependent on all the characters in the party having money to be able to function. If you're playing a game just straight out the box, or you have a GM that's not doing the math behind the screens, as you level up, as the challenges of monsters level up, if your characters don't have access to magic weapons, the big 6, we got that one in quick, follow this card, friends, you inevitably will just fall off. And if your characters, say you're barbarian, druid, magus who didn't take appraise, which is int-based, and cleric, I don't know, all just miss out on appraise, they have no idea what the value of an item is unless the GM just flat tells you, which I feel like most GMs do, or you diplomacy your way into some crazy high value, or just like the NPCs are nice. With the psychometry skill, or basically the entire everything that the occultist does at low level play, seriously, that class is so fun. I've been GMing for one in our Kingmaker run. It's so good. Once per day, you can concentrate for a minute while in physical contact with an item or location. I didn't know you could do this off location, that's dope. During which, you receive flashes of insight regarding the subject's nature and ownership. After 1 minute, you attempt a DC 15 appraise check to decipher these visions. You gain one piece of information about the historical significance or the last previous owner, such as a glimpse of the last owner's appearance or emotional state determined by the GM. You learn one more piece of information for every 10 by which you beat the DC, as long as you concentrate for an additional minute for each piece of information. Should you happen to fail by less than 5, or the item has no significant imprint, you don't get anything. If you fail by 5 or more, the item appears to be psychically significant even if it isn't, or you just get a wildly inaccurate reading, or, in other words, you advance the plot. You learn things, you essentially sense motive the magic item in question. Did the big bad drop a spell component? Did the big bad maybe drop his weapon for some reason? Do you come upon a massacred village and pick up somebody's like farm implements and then start object reading them? This is a really strong investigation tool, and it's really fun for world building too. It's a different way for characters to get and process information about their campaign than just guessing in some cases, or through your typical like talk to folks survival sense motive arcs. Since it's int-based, it makes classes like the wizard, the, again, occultist, and anybody else be able to participate and thrive in these particular kinds of environments without burning spell slots. Oh, speaking of spell slots, that's the next skill we're talking about. Linguistics. Linguistics can be used to decipher writing in unfamiliar languages or messages written in incomplete or archaic form, as well as pick up forgeries, and of course, for every rank invested in linguistics, you get an extra language, which is dope. But so quickly are all of the ranks in linguistics superseded by comprehend languages, tongues, so on and so forth. Consider automatic writing. Once per week, you can spend 1 hour posing questions while your hand unconsciously scribbles messages of varying legibility and accuracy. At the end of the hour, you attempt a linguistics check to decipher the meanings of these messages. If successful, you gain information as if you'd auguried. If you have 10 or more ranks in linguistics, you can attempt a higher DC to get divination, the chance of successfully producing coherent or meaningful writing in any form is 60 plus 5% for every 1 by which your check exceeds the DC to a maximum of 90. You gotta set the DC before you go, the GM rolls the check and percentage secretly. It takes an hour and can only be done at the beginning once every 7 days, but that's still a free divination. That's still a free augury. That's still a free, will a bad thing happen if I do this? Which is just very, very good. Now, how are we going to put this into play, you ask? Well, we're making a skill monkey and we need to be psychic based. So for me, at first this was going to be like, let us build an occultist. But I think there's someone who could optimize around performing these skills just a little better. You knew you'd see it. Today we're building 20 levels of investigator using the psychic detective archetype. God, I wish I could stack this with empiricist. Oh well, it is what it is. The psychic detective doesn't get acrobatics, climb, or perform. That's fine, not what we're here for. What we are here for is the fact that the psychic detective can cast spells drawn from the psychic spell list. No potions or things here. Of course, that's super important for us because that means we don't have to grab psychic sensitivity. We're not just some force-sensitive rando running around. We're essentially a Jedi. Not Leia, but Luke, as it were. Except it's some weird timeline where Luke, in fact, did get to go to Toshi Station and from there became a private eye. Whatever. In return for being a spontaneous psychic caster, we lose out on alchemy. We also get all the detect spells and find traps at first level, calm spirit and daylight. I don't know why daylight, but sure. As a 3rd level spell, modify memory at 4th, and banishment, moment of prescience, and probably most importantly, greater scrying as a 6th level spell. In addition, we get some buffs on saves against psychic things. We also can take Phrenic amps when we're taking investigator talents, but that's not as important as the actual archetype itself. But of course, the real big draw of the investigator is that sweet, sweet inspiration, which can do a lot of crazy stuff. Most important here, adding a d6 to a skill check, and since the higher we appraise things, the better off we are, raising that through the roof seems real good. Same too for linguistics, because we're using that as augury. Being able to hedge our bets just seems really important. For our race today, it's a half-elf, because half-elves get that free, sweet skill focus. Super huge for us because that's just what we do. For our traits, probably still reactionary. It's gonna be really hard for me to ever tell you not to take reactionary. And we haven't talked about this one in a hot sec. Student of philosophy. Again, I really wish we could have forced the empiricist in here somehow. It's just not quite there. Because everything trades out poison use, it's dumb. Anyway, student of philosophy lets you use your int in place of your chaw on diplomacy checks to persuade others or bluff checks to convince others that a lie is true, which allows you to face with that big brain of yours. That also allows us to take our charisma and throw it into the ground as hard as humanly possible. Also, a half-elf favorite class bonus, adding plus 1/4 on inspiration rolls will add up pretty darn quick. For our stat priority, intelligence is the big one, intelligence is the important one. Then dexterity, followed by constitution to make sure you're combat viable. Then wisdom to make sure you don't get oopsied and dominated or held personed and killed. Strength and charisma are both dump stats for this build, which means it looks really good in a lower point buy because you don't need either of those ability scores, meaning the other 4 can be middle of the road or as high as you want your intelligence to be. Now, feats. At level 1, we'll be taking skill focused linguistics, right alongside skill focus appraise that we took, of course, from our race. Grabbing both of these out the gate means we have a +3 on those skill rolls, which will eventually go up to a +6 once we reach 10th level, which again makes us really good at what we're doing from jump. There's a lot of really cool stuff for this build that can do that. It's sort of unreal, I'm not gonna lie to you. With starting gold alone, you can have enough stuff to be functional from level 1. That never happens. At level 3, we'll take Orator, which will let you use linguistics in place of bluff to tell a falsehood or conceal information, in place of diplomacy to change the attitude of a creature, or in place of intimidate to force a creature to cooperate, which will allow us to use not only our better mod, but our better stat for everything else that Student of Philosophy doesn't cover. Almost invalidates the whole trait, but since there's very specific, it must be used for this kind of language, being able to double down doesn't seem bad to me. Logical spell at level 5, it's just staple for us, it really is. Last time we talked about a psychic caster, we talked about that, and you can follow this card right up here if you missed that one. Since we can in fact be shut down by being shaken, logical spell is just staple with a capital staple. Next up, Psychic Maestro. Choose 2 occult skill unlocks. You can use each of these 1 additional time per day or week. You must have at least 1 rank in the skills. Twice a week divination, not from our spell list, is really darn good. Honestly, in some campaigns, twice every 7 days will be more than enough. Of course, we will be choosing psychometry and automatic writing if that wasn't super clear. Next, if I'm honest, we're gonna just jam extra inspiration on for 3 more points in that big inspiration pool, because feats aren't as important for us as they are for other builds. There will be some ways that we can use our inspiration for free, but this is also kind of how we function in combat, so being able to get extra points is always something I'm a fan of. Next up, Esoteric Linguistics, which lets you linguistics in place of UMD to activate a scroll, or in place of a spellcraft to identify a scroll. Again, say it with me, kids, versatility. If you don't know what to do in combat, sometimes you just need a scroll of Fireball. Get your wizard to scribe one up for you and hand it to you so your action economy goes that way if you're not sure what you should do, or even just like haste, slow, create pit. Sometimes it is the smartest thing to do to just free up the action economy for everyone else around you so they, who truthfully can do much more damage than us, have that ability to thrive, function, and otherwise be good at stuff. Next, as if Psychic Maestro wasn't good enough, Psychic Virtuoso is a +2 bonus on checks to use occult skill unlocks. If you have more than 10, it's a +4, stacking really nice with skill focus and everything else that we do to make those numbers just shoot into the stratosphere. And you knew you'd see it from Tommy. Next up, we gotta do it. There's almost always a really good deific obedience for your particular build. Had to go digging on this one. I was hoping I could find some occult skill unlocky or psychic E flavored ones. And if I'm really honest with you, I bet you could dig through a lot of these and eventually come up with one that is just flat good for occult skill unlocks. Instead, God, Irori would look good on this one too. This pairs really well, right alongside the perfect scholar we did last week. Follow this card, man, I'm racking them up today. It's just like the good old days, being real good at identifying the things. But for funsies, how's about instead Geryon? Let's worship an archdevil. Nothing bad ever happened to that, right? Hooray! Right on its heels, Diverse Obedience. We'll be using the old Exalted, then new Sentinel for the very last one. Geryon's Torpor, once per day by spending 10 minutes meditating on the unholy might of the heresies Geryon sows in the hearts of all. During that 24 hours following, you can grant yourself and up to 4 other creatures within 30 feet a +4 profane bonus on ability checks, attack rolls, saving throws, or for us, skill checks as a move action, maintaining these as a free action for up to 1 round per hit dice, after which you must spend 10 minutes and then go again, basically refocusing a la 2E. I sorta like this one a little better for our build than using Irori, just because this will make sure we can pad out the rest of the squad, give everybody else a +4 on attack rolls right before a combat, including ourselves, I suppose, huh? Then 10 minutes later, when it's time for automatic writing, we can just jam skill checks on everybody. Even better if you're in a party of a bunch of psychics who can then just aid you. Coffin Feast, at the end of the day, turning a humanoid corpse into a hero's feast, which buffs out attack rolls, will saves, things like that, and a free regenerate. Again, talk to your friends before you have your friends eat your other friends, but I digress. Lastly, improved initiative. You could jam extra inspiration here if you really wanted to, but it's like, sometimes you gotta go first. Even if that's just to use the scroll of Meteor Swarm that the wizard has passed you before you go nuking whatever holy realm in heaven your archdevil army has gone to. Something Blood War? Could be fun. Alrighty, for our Phrenic Amps / Investigator talents, Relentless Casting out the gate, because it has to be a Phrenic Amp at third, lets you spend 1 point from the Phrenic pool to roll twice on caster level checks to break SR, and take the higher, because probably we end up doing some blasting, especially if our intelligence is thrown through the roof. We might just be spending a lot of combat's mind thrusting. Could be neat. Everything else is an investigator talent, though. Inspired Intelligence lets us add our inspiration die to all knowledge checks, linguistics, or spellcraft without expending a use of inspiration. Oopsie, we can Nova the hell out of the divination. Amazing Inspiration lets you roll a d8 instead of a d6. At 20th, we're rolling 2d8 to, again, be gooder at the thing. Speaking of be gooder at the thing, Combat Inspiration is probably one we want to grab next to make sure we're not spending 2 uses of inspiration when we're stabbing or saving against another stab. Again, I think a lot of times in combat, we're just in the back magic missiling folks, but you never know. Expanded Inspiration lets you do the same thing as our inspired one, except with Diplomacy, Heal, Perception, Profession, and Sense Motive. Too bad there's not one of these for Praise. Oh well. Tenacious Inspiration, really these all just fall right in line, lets you roll the inspiration with advantage. Scrying Familiarity lets you roll twice and take the higher on saves against divination, scrying spells and effects, and perception checks to notice scrying sensors, and more importantly, caster level checks to overcome spell resistance when we fire off our own greater scrying. Eidetic Recollection lets you take 10 on any knowledge check even if you're about to get your ass kicked, or spend a use of inspiration to take 20. Why not? Seems real great. Then lastly, Inspirational Expertise, because who doesn't want a +4 insight bonus on attack rolls against that monster or type of monster for a round? Whenever we identify a monster with our take 20 knowledge check, seems just arbitrarily easy. Not a lot of spells we're going to talk about today. 3 in particular jump out to me though. First off, at level 1, True Skill. As a standard action, when casting the spell, select one skill for which you can attempt a skill check. The next time you attempt a skill check using the selected skill, before the duration of minutes per level ends, you gain an insight bonus on the check equal to half your caster level. Seems super easy peasy, right? We're just stacking them up. Hermaean Potential, again, minutes per level, the opposite of Ill Omen. On the next attack roll, saving throw, ability check, or skill check the target attempts, it rolls twice and takes the more favorable result. For every 5 caster levels you have, the target can roll twice on additionals to a maximum of 5 at 20th level. This spell is super versatile. Tag the Barbarian, let them roll with advantage when they're vital striking. Tag yourself, roll with advantage so you don't screw up your once a week casting. Or like tag yourself in combat so you don't accidentally step in the pit trap. And lastly, Investigative Mind at 10 minutes per level. When attempting an appraise, knowledge, linguistics, or spellcraft check, both of the checks we're trying to do, you can roll twice and take the higher. If you have an ability that allows you to roll twice, you cannot use them both. The spell is discharged. Again, it's just even more advantage. Extra spell slots from different levels to do the thing we want to do. Super good. And lastly, our items. Notice how I didn't say magic items. Okay, one of them's magic. 2 out of the 3 that we're talking about today are dirt cheap, as in buy with your starting gold dirt cheap. And they do exactly what you want them to do. First, at 25 gold pieces, the automatic writing planchette is a +2 circumstance bonus on linguistics checks when automatic writing. If used in conjunction with a haunt, you double the rate of communication with said haunt. Also, play an occultist or psychic person in Carrying Crown, it would be dope. And you get a +4 bonus to decipher it. These things don't stack with other items that do similar, but again, just tag on 2 more. You should very rapidly get to a point where you're getting meaningful auguries and divinations right when you need them. Now, is the wizard doing them more? Sure. I'm not advocating for skills to ever just flat beat out the wizard, with the exception of in 2e, where survival can just flat let you survive in the void of space. What a wild time to play TTRPGs. The psychometrist's gloves are even cheaper at 10 gold. Wear them for 8 uninterrupted hours, your dex checks are a little worse, but after that 8-hour period, you pop off the gloves, so basically you wear these to bed, and you get a +2 circumstance bonus on appraise to psychometry, or a +2 on figure out how the plot works. Lastly, the sensory deprivation hood. Fun fact, kids, don't Google this one without putting Pathfinder right after, because you will get some other stuff. This quite expensive magic item, an especially heavy leather hoodwink cowl, is designed to quiet the wearer's mundane senses, allowing them to focus on their supernatural ones. Donning or removing the hood requires a minute or 5 rounds if you have a good top, I guess. You, of course, are blinded, deafened, and you take a -10 penalty on perception checks. If you have blind sense, blind sight, tremor sense, so on and so forth. You can take a full round action to suppress those senses for as long as you wear the hood or until you resume using them, but you can't cheat with tremor sense, basically. As long as your senses are suppressed, you gain the ability to perform automatic writing, dowsing, and psychometry even if you aren't yourself, so neat, you can share with your friends. But if you do have that ability, it's a flat +5 on those skill unlocks, 2 of which are the ones in question today. We could have talked about survival too, we really could have, but I feel like since this video was about skills that folks don't normally use, and in a lot of my games, survival's just been very, very important. Maybe I'm biased, I really like outdoors games, but I just don't think that skill is useless at all. Also, you can contact other plane while wearing this thing, which is, well, to put it one way, super dope. In the optimized party god, I don't even know what you really are. Probably the control wizard, I want to say. I think the psychic has enough magic there that they can make that work, and if they don't, again, just grab scrolls, toss a coin to your wizard, get a scroll of Wall of Force, fire that thing off. But a lot of times in combat, your role in combat is just to make sure that the combat goes easier, that you've set up enough by reading through the plot with occult skill unlocks and scrying and things, that when we get to the combat is made that much easier. You're intel. Not the character winning all the glory, but you are the character who makes sure that glory can be won in the first place, which is super relevant. Seriously, I feel like 30% of all the deaths in TTRPGs, maybe even more, are caused just by players who don't think and run into the room, only to be crit to death by 20-odd dudes. In any case, that's all the time I have for this one. What do y'all think? I know what at least one of my patrons thinks, because all he plays is investigators, and really, this is a pretty darn good one. Would we roll this up? Have we played it? How do you, in your games, use skills that aren't normally used for anything for value? Let me know down in the comments. Next week, well, we got somebody who needs to cut the line. If you're in the Discord, you know I had one of my coworkers at Chipotle join the channel for a game. I'm kind of thinking I can convert all of them over, if I'm honest with you. But my friend needs a character. My friend's come over from 5th edition, and he's gonna level on Tuesday, so I should probably bang out this character for him. Of all the things to show up at my table with, like a rogue, but not a rogue, because he's played him too much, so fast, by the time you see him, it's already too late. I don't even know what I'm doing, or at least I didn't before I started putting it together. The build is kinda neat. It one-shot a direwolf the other day, and we'll talk about it next week, but don't call it a rogue. I'll see you then.